Thank you very much for having me here. I don't know what I could really say in 5 to 7 minutes, so I'm going to just stop whenever you ask me to stop, because I don't think very much meaning can be put in 5 to 7 minutes. तो कहने को बहुत कुछ था, अगर कहने को आते उनकी ये इनायत है कि कुछ नहीं कहते. So anyway, I belong to mainstream education, and I firmly believe that you have to educate, you have to, even English has to be done. I also believe that some things have to be added onto that mainstream education. If we are losing our roots, it's not because English is making us lose our roots. It's our mindsets that are making us lose our roots. And Pawan and I have had this conversation very often. It is our generation that lost our roots. Let's admit it, because we grew up in a post-colonial India where to know your heritage was a heresy. And that's why, since we don't know our own heritage, we cannot ever pass it on to our children. And then we turn around and say Gen X doesn't know this and doesn't know that. Well, Gen Y also doesn't know it. So, anyway, so the issue is really that what is the aim of education, and I think it is both an individual and collective aim, and both are very valid aims. We cannot decry one from the other. And the individual aim is actually based on the needs, on personal growth, which must then come into contact with societal. Because unless an individual and societal come together, there is no progress, development that is possible. What has happened, I'm going to run through this, but what has happened is that a paradigm shift has taken place, which is a shift in society. It's a shift the way humankind has grown from hereditary professions to a choice of profession, which causes its own stresses, which brings about all the rural-urban divide, and to oversimplify things, and the value systems involved. Money has come to play a vital role in society, and a technologically driven society, which is what we are. That's why we are here. Otherwise, we'd be sitting under a tree and talking. A technologically driven society looks for greater investment in research and development, greater number of scientific discoveries translate into inventions, into increased productivity, into creation of wealth. And that's what all your education in society is all about, as it is in modern terms. And therefore, money has become an indispensable hallmark of achievement. And if we are true to ourselves, what do we want our children to do? And I won't even ask you that question. You can answer it for yourselves. Because I have sat there and done admissions for years and years and years. I completely know what parents want, no matter what seminars we attend. Now, education and society absolutely impact each other, and therefore the emphasis shifts to marketable degrees rather than real knowledge, because that is the power of certifications. Now, the way the society has grown is from the paradigm of the Reformation, Renaissance, Enlightenment agenda, industrialization, to put it all together. The industrial age in itself created wide gulf and disparities. I'm hoping that the ICT age will create a more democratic society, which I think it will. Now, provided we can make it available to everybody. My own experience with young people and modern, westernized, young, whatever you want to call them, wearing clothes of the kind Pawan described, have a great hunger to know about themselves and their own heritage, and I have done enough experiments to figure that out. Now, why do I say ICT will make us perhaps more democratic is because increased transportation, rapid transportation, communication has literally made us a global village. So there are no secrets. Satellite technology ensures there are no secrets, and whatever we do in one part of the world impacts the other parts of the world, and therefore we have given a rise to environment and ecological concerns, because we understand that now. We have given rise to grassroots movements, the NGOs, the social activism, the propagation and practices of recycling waste, alternate energy sources, holistic medicine, all that has come out of this interconnectedness and the knowledge that we are. This was in our philosophy. It has just come to us technologically today. Therefore, we have a different perception, and the nature of awareness and consciousness has to change with this different perception. And therefore, we have to realize that we have a potential to evolve to higher levels of consciousness, which embraces all creation rather than our petty, egoistic selves. And we have to also realize that there is no single objective truth. There are multiple truths. How do we acquire the higher consciousness? Formal education institutions concentrate only on one aspect, that is developing of the mind, which Pawan talked about. But mind is only cognition and intelligence, mental or thought perceptions and reactions. But today's mind has to meet the challenges of where we have come, technologically come, developmentally come, economically come. And for that we need to have adjustment, adaptations and accountability. I don't think anyone sitting in the room wants to put the clock back to how we lived. I don't think we want to live 27 years on an average. So, therefore, it's not a question of making minor adjustments while maintaining status quo, because that will obscure the sense of who we are, and where we are going. Now, Bertrand Russell, I think, made a very important comment when he said that our mental life influences our thinking, willing, and feeling. And all three are interconnected. Knowledge has given us power to do unimaginable good and unimaginable bad. And therefore, we have the power to control weather, to change tides and whatever else. Up to now, we didn't do too much ill because we didn't have the power to do too much ill. So it's not as if we didn't fight wars, we fought wars. But we could not have the horrifying consequences that it has today. And therefore, we have to retool our thinking that brings about a transformation of consciousness, which leads to a paradigm shift from seeing ourselves not as separate from the world, but as part of the world, so that whatever we do to the world will impact us. And then only can we correct what is happening. Because the world, again to use Jiddu Krishnamurti's phrases, is not an open book, is not a book, preconceived written book and you take a chapter and read it. It's a question of constantly creating it, emerging from it and evolving with it. And therefore it has to be something more integrated and complex. But our teaching and learning systems are closed rather than open. So this new transformation of consciousness requires open-ended teaching and learning institutions and structures and systems before we can develop into higher levels of consciousness. Otherwise we lead to not harmony but contradictions, because we are put into that rigid mold. And therefore what we need is a vision logic, not a rational logic. And that is what is important. Now will is the understanding of what can be achieved and what can't be achieved. Not because you have the capacity. You have the capacity to destroy. That's where the thinking and the willing has to come together to feeling. Do I really want to destroy? So mere capacity is not enough. Mere thought is not enough. It has to be connected to the heart. But how have our feelings evolved? Our feelings have evolved from competition. Our old ancestors were nomads, hunters. They cleared out one tract of land and then they got more food, they got more vegetation, more animals, whatever else. But today, what has happened is we've evolved into a society which has grown from individual to family to tribes to nations to federations. And yet, we haven't got past that old thought. And so we are largely divided into two groups. One is with us, one is against us. All those with us, we will support. All those against us, we will go to war against them. And this goes on shifting and goes on changing. And therefore, all history that we teach are actually wars that bigots and tyrants have waged against others and will continue to wage. Now, therefore, if we move on, finally, what do educational institutions need to do apart from harmonizing thought, will and action is to devise modes where the greatest potential of human nature can be sought and at least the aspiration is there to be achieved. For that, learning has three processes: competence, engagement, and being ethical. Competence, we all know. We must have those competences. I don't believe you don't need competences. You need mathematics, you need writing, you need reading, you need language, you need computational skills. you need articulational skills. Engagement, the capacity and desire to change society. That is the engagement with society, where personal growth and fulfillment may be fundamental but must be linked to society, and therefore you must be engaged with that society. And finally, to be ethical. To be ethical is to search for truth, to desire good no matter what anybody does. And I will end by quoting Jiddu Krishnamurti. I love what he says here. The real issue is to find out how to live in a world that is so compulsively authoritarian, so brutal and tyrannical, not only in the immediate relationship, but in social relationships. How to live in such a world with the extraordinary capacity to meet its demands and also to be free. I feel education of the right kind should cultivate the mind not to fall into grooves of habit, but to have a mind that is extraordinarily alive, not with knowledge, not with experience, but alive. Because the more knowledge one has, the less alert the brain is. Therefore, educational institutions must develop technological proficiency, but must teach the students to uncover the deeper layers of the mind and to encourage inner development so that all the parts of that person's being become a harmonious whole. Thank you very much.